While everyone's getting seated, I do want to do a little plug, and I want to thank personally all the women in the room that are here. We are big into helping women in the Front Range, helping women everywhere, and of course, look, the percentages of 2080 are true tonight too. We do have an organization called She Does Data, and you guys are welcome to come too. But we feature some of the top women in the city and the work that they're doing with data. So there's a Facebook site for She Does Data. Please join us. And I think we're going to have one more event before the end of the year. But we're here to support women and women in data. Yay! This is going to be some fun, isn't it? I've known this man, how many years? 15, 20?
A lot of years.
A lot of years. We were in high school at that point. And I've always admired his work. He has a passion for helping others, his teams, and his passion to use data to improve the world, which is something we all should be looking at, is amazing too. I was so excited because he went, and I'm a Google Kool-Aid drinker. Everyone kind of knows that in the room. So I went to Google Next, and I found out he was going, and we were trying to get together. But when he got back from Google Next, we got together, and my mouth just dropped to the ground. I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe the work you're doing." So we're really excited. I'm excited to have you here to tell everyone. We've been through this a couple times, not really practicing, we don't want to practice, but back and forth a little bit. And I think the information you're about to hear from Sean is totally amazing. So, all right. I get to cheat. Look, you didn't even have cheat notes. The heck, man. All right, take us back to the beginning. How did the initiative form? What was the mission of the initiative? Take us back.
Sure. Thank you, Julie, and thanks for everyone coming out tonight. My name is Sean Best. I'm Senior Director of AI Data and Analytics for DaVita. We've got about 2,800 clinics across the United States, more around the world, and about 200,000 patients. So we dialyze about 30 million treatments a year, to give you a little scope and scale of what it is we do. About 4 years ago, we really started to kind of toy with the idea of moving into machine learning, which is, the technology behind AI, and it really kind of exploring. And we spent some time doing a few things, but what really came out initially was why are we doing it? I think that was a great dialogue before, the use case driven. So is our patients. This is about advancing healthcare. Everyone knows that we're trying to make healthcare cheaper, more accessible, more accurate. So it was about patients and how are we going to get there. So it was really our CIO, Alan Cullop, that had the vision to start an AI COE. So before we really had much formal machine learning happening, we really took on the effort of creating a COE, getting some buy-in, educating our leaders, and creating some common ground for communication and how we would pursue projects. So it was really that vision that got us started, and that was built on top of, I kind of slipped a few notes under the door that we might have some things to show him when the time was right. So there was some work with much of my team here, most of the newer people, and then some that have been around for a while. But it was the kind of innovation and the creativity of the team that had brought these ideas forward, and then we took them, kind of in a maturation scale into a point where we're ready to start showing some things. So that was kind of the foundation, if you will, is getting the AI COE set up, establishing a way to assess projects and really look at things in an organized fashion and be very specific, what is it we're going to accomplish, what are the outcomes, and have that thought process up front with the C-suite so that we could really leverage them, because you then need buy-in and commitment, you need resources, you need data. There's some good conversation there. So that really kind of greased the skids, if you will, to get us started. And then using that and really taking the leaders' participation into an ask of, hey, go back and get some of these ideas. What is the hardest thing you're trying to solve? Where do you spend the most money? Where do you have the most people invested? In healthcare, we don't like to talk about money that much because we're focused on the patients, but you got to move resources around. So it's not about dollars, it's about resources. So we really asked them to say, what is either crippling your business or what would you like to do? And that really formed our initial, call it pipeline. And then from there, we started to move on into individual projects. But it was that initial kind of bow wave of interest, momentum, and commitment that really got us started.
Great. By the way, I'm not the only one asking questions, so stop at any time, okay? So what did that educational process look like? I mean, was it you mentoring? Was it, going into the executives' offices and explaining like 101, or did you have classrooms? How did you get your team enabled in this area?
Yes, all the above. One thing we did in a structured way, and this is part of the AI COE, I would strongly recommend anyone that hasn't done this and wants to know where to start, really think about how you're going to organize, how you're going to communicate. So the education process was facilitated through the AI COE. We brought in several experts from some of the big consulting firms, from big management consulting, to kind of lay down what is AI. Kind of start the meeting with, hey, let's all get clear on at least what we're going to talk about. Because if you don't know this, if you're not that close to it, it's more confusing than almost anything I've done in 30 years in data. And I've read several of Mr. Inman's books. Those read very straightforward compared to the conversations I have to have with a lot of these executives, because you're drawing them deeper into the data and the technology than they've ever been. We started talking about model management, and it's almost like trying to take a data model and tell your VP of HR why it's relevant. I mean, it's that kind of a leap. So the education process was multi-pronged, but I'd say our biggest sort of return on investment was using some experts combined with our local experts, combined with some dialogue between the group right there live of, hey, here's what we're trying to do, here's what we need from you, here's how we're going to accomplish it, and this is what success will look like. And let that conversation boil a little bit. People need to feel really comfortable. We spent a lot of time saying there are no stupid questions, because you could see it in people's eyes. They weren't even ready to ask a question. This was too far from their comfort zone. And I think a lot of people thought they're going to have a high school algebra test and they're going to get outed that they were never good at that, even though they're an SVP. It was kind of that feeling, and we really had to bring it down to, not to dumb it down, but get it to a level that they understand and bring it to them in terms that they are comfortable with. That was really, I'd say, the biggest effort in our education.
What was that effort? How long did that take you? Did you just spend months educating people, or?
Yeah, really pretty much all of 2018 and well into this year was an effort in parallel with everything else we're doing specifically around education. First educating internal to our IT teams, out to these business groups, repeating and reiterating, bring things back where maybe we'd gone through a concept before, and bring it back. I'll open up meetings and say, look, this is going to be remedial for everyone. It's really not, but to make it comfortable, to make people feel included, to make them feel comfortable to ask questions. It's really about going over these concepts. Most of the people in this room understand, machine learning versus regression. They might know about supervised, unsupervised, but you get outside this room and that is just Greek. And there's not a lot of analogies for people to pick up on this easily. I've had to dig pretty hard and leverage the team to bring together visuals and concepts to kind of bring it down to a level that they can consume. But it's still a challenge, and it takes repetition, and it takes a lot of patience, and you've got to be willing to say the same thing over and over again until it lands right, because it is a complex topic.
Okay. So they say that AI ML works better when you have, the more data the better, right? And so how did you handle, when we start projects or we see projects getting started at our customers' sites, we always see that I don't want to share my data thing going down. Did you run into that? And if so, how did you help your teams get past that point?
So we're in IT, so we actually get all the data. No, but a fair question. It's really about bringing the problems out. Once people understand there may be a solution to a problem they've never been able to solve, they light up. Now you got to deliver on that, and you got to prove it, so it's hard work. But you can come at these things, hey, understand, what is their perspective? What are they trying to solve? And then let's focus on that use case. And then to the points made earlier, then go see if the data is there. Once somebody's brought into a solution, if then all you need from them is access to their data, they're going to be pretty wide open to that. So, it's really the method. What is the problem? How are we going to solve it? Let's build a project, and then kind of like rock soup, the data will come.
Okay. All right. The other big thing is we hear, well, I can't do that because I can't find good resources. They're nowhere to be found. Tell us about your team, which is represented well here tonight. And how did you build that team? And furthermore, what's the future look like as far as what types of resources?
Yeah, this is absolutely about the people. So if you want to know where the best data scientists are, they're over here. That's my joke because much of my team is sitting right in front of me. It really is about people. There's a lot of tech, there's a lot of different things you can be doing, but I feel, and you can ask my team, it's really about creating an environment and creating a team and a culture that is excited about doing these things. These problems are hard. This is going to take patience. You're going to deal with a lot of setbacks. You're going to deal with resistance. So it's got to be a team that likes working together, that gets excited about taking on these problems. I can't tell you how many times we've had to rework decks or rework output to make it conducive to the audience we're going to go to. So you can't get frustrated early on. So it's using that, then once you have in place a culture, an environment, and a team, then to recruit to that team is much, much easier. So then you start leveraging your professional networks, you leverage your vendors, you leverage your academic relationships. A lot of data scientists are coming out of or are back in and getting advanced degrees at these academic campuses. So be there, be engaged. Ask your teams to share the word. Both of my sons are at local campuses. I've got them recruiting every single day. It's a wide net, it's a low hit rate, and then you're going to lose even more in the interview process. We've spent a lot of time formalizing and structuring our interview process to make sure it's complete with both culture, team dynamic, and the tech, as well as the business acumen. These are all important, and you've got to get the majority of that right, and it's essential, in my opinion, to get the team and the culture right. You can teach tech to some degree, but there's just people that will never be conducive to a team, and that's not going to move you forward. So that's how we think about it.
Can I interrupt for a second? As somebody who's always been on the business side of data and digital, you guys look like you could use a drink, but thank you to all the people that are actually doing the work, because it's been, it's what we talked about, but it's what you guys do.
Finally, huh?
Finally.
Finally. I wanted to tell you a funny story, one of my most embarrassing moments as it pertains to getting resources. I don't even know that I've told you this, but my mom was in the hospital over by DU, and so I was cutting in back, trying to get away from traffic and everything, Denver. And so this guy had his car, so I start behind him, honk, And he pulls over, his girlfriend's in the car, and she's going, and I go, I'm not going to hurt you. I said, but I'm looking for people like you. And he goes, I said, I'm really trying to recruit.
Still creepy.
You're right. You know what he said? The son of a bitch goes, I just got hired by Google last week. You're like, God dang it. So you will go to all kinds of ends to find good people.
Definitely, again, it's search in every direction. Was that Mark?
Yeah, I wish I had Mark back then.
But yeah, it's searching, far and wide. But I'd say, again, the word gets out. If you're an environment and a team and a culture people want to work for, they're going to hear about that. So again, leveraging those networks I find is really essential. And then think hard about those academic campuses, those relationships, and events like this. You've got to get outside the box. You're not going to find your top data scientist through a standard requisition posting and your vendor partner. You're going to have to look a little harder. You're going to have to screen a little harder. So be thoughtful about that and try to think about and ask your candidates, what are they looking for? What do they want to do? I have a pretty liberal work from home, flexible schedule policy. That's a really big deal. I've got 2 working dads, single dads on my team. They need that kind of flexibility. So, think about what it matters to those individuals and see if you can incorporate that into your culture.
Ping pong tables.
Of course.
There we go. All right, tell us about your technical profile. What technology are you using to deploy these projects?
Sure. So we've got several use cases in development or in pilot things from, so in healthcare modalities, essentially what is your disease? We look at keeping people either on a certain type of therapy or help them get into that therapy. We're doing this on both on-prem capabilities. We've built our own GPU server, have a full pipeline orchestration, and we also use Google Cloud. So we're using some of their AI products. We are very happy with where we've been with them. Some of them are here tonight, have been involved with us from the beginning. So, it's the tech, I'd say, this may sound underwhelming, but the tech is the easiest part of the big picture, but it is about getting those partnerships. You got to have people involved that you can lean on. Things are changing literally daily in this space. So you can't get too glommed on to a given tool. You got to understand how to assess that tool. Why was that popular? Why was it working good? Where are you going? Constant partnership. We've got to iterate on where we are, where we're going, and you've got to have the tolerance to tear up and rewrite your plan, every other week if that's what happens. Because again, new entrants, new realizations, test and fail, test and succeed. Where is this going to go? That's really what we're looking at, and it's frustrating. I've had many leaders kind of give me this, you're kidding me, right? This can't be this volatile. I'm like, no, actually it is. There's a lot of desire to connect this to our standard app dev or our standard analytic builds, where you had a much more predictable, much more consistent SDLC. That's still maturing in this space. And the tools, we talked a lot about some of the things that are available now, to bring people that really don't have data science background into play. That's true, but do you want to bet your business on the output that someone that doesn't have that background? So at least have those senior people ready to go to oversee that, and then how to build your tool set so that you're doing test-driven development, that you've got monitoring in place, that you've got validation in place so that you can stand behind your work and know if you're not hitting the mark. I've had a few people start to talk about, well, I think I've got everything in place, but I don't really have the quality side of things. Well, we have a quality champion. We have a chief quality analyst that's his only job, is to make sure that everything we're doing is accurate. And so there's a tool set there, and that's not connected to our standard development tool set like anything. Let's take it, developers shouldn't test and testers don't develop. Same concept. Let's separate the quality from the development and make sure that we're doing it right.
Any questions? All right, tell us what the future looks like. What's your roadmap? What do you hope to accomplish over the next couple of years?
Gosh, so much. So we're expanding our portfolio quite a bit. We're in operations, we're in clinical space, we're in the financial space. So the future is really expand on the projects that we've built, continue to standardize. One of the goals I set for our team and for ourselves this year was to be a standard offering within IT by the end of the year. So our intake process, our methodology, all the financials, all the work that goes on with the back office is really connect all that and make it both explainable and consistent to the leaders that are requesting these services. So we're on a good track there. Another is to really make sure that we've got success at the project level. Now, success in AI, if you don't know this, is more about a batting average more than it is about a target of 100%. If anyone's got 100% success in ML, I really want to talk to you, because first of all, I don't really believe it, and second of all, if you have, yeah, it's tough, and that should be something that everyone's aware of. This is really hard stuff. You're dealing with, when you go into things with most projects, app dev, reporting, you know exactly what you want, or close to what you want, and then you're going to use design thinking. You're going to use the project process to refine that. There was a good question about if you have a big pile of data, what do you do with it? Well, you could go run some correlation testing on that data and see what kind of signals you have, but it's still, the point was very well made. You really need to start with the end in mind, and you've got to look harder at that, I think, than you ever had with a standard app dev or reporting project, because you don't know exactly what data is going to come out of it when you begin. So that's a big question mark, and that makes people uncomfortable. They want to know, hey, this field is going to house my BMI for these patients over this range. That's not how it works with ML. You have to get your model built, look at your output, and then format that to the operationalization endpoint you're going to use. So it takes some tolerance of shift. You got to have a process that is iterative and can be changed mid-flight. And you've got to be thinking about, hey, if what I thought was going to come out of this is not the end result, how do you make that comfortable to your customer? So there's a lot of that that's maturing. I feel very good about the progress we've made, and hearing about how other industries are doing and where they are, in the comments about healthcare. I think Jason was mentioning, some exciting stuff. Well, I'd like to think we're part of that exciting stuff. So, getting this into a maturation where it's not a giant question mark. We've focused very heavily on our assessment process. So really looking at a project, we go through and take that, we talk with our legal partners, because if you haven't been checked into this, I got bad news for you. Your lawyers are going to be really interested in this stuff. And that's a good and a bad thing. We have great partnerships, but we have to spend a lot of time. I've spent more time with lawyers in the last 18 months than I ever had, because they have to understand what you're doing. So again, you've got another group of people that don't understand the methodology, but need to understand the outcome and how the data is going to be used. So we spend time there, making sure they're comfortable, bringing that into a standard process, taking it forward so that, again, with the pipeline and the intake process, that it becomes a very normal project, a normal process to move through that. Hitting the success marks, we're improving as we go. We're not letting any kind of setbacks slow us down, but trying to learn as fast as we can what was successful, how do we get there, apply it forward. Continuous improvement. It's a core value at DaVita, but it's something that I wake up every morning with, literally in this space, because every day we're learning something new. Every day we're probably hitting a bit of a setback, and then we dust off, we replan and move forward. I'd say those are my goals, as well as really being able to show, my big goal would be able to show dramatic improvement in patients' lives. We've got a couple of real good starts on that. I hope to be able to talk about next year about how we did that. And it really has to do with getting people, if anyone's heard of the executive order, they're talking about 1 in 4 patients should be at home. So what does that mean? I won't go on a long explanation, but dialysis and cleaning your blood can be done at home. There's a couple different therapies. It's quite challenging. So one of the things we're excited about is how can we help move that forward? How can AI make people more comfortable, better prepared, and more successful to treat at home? So that's one of the things I'd like to see happen.
Great. I have newfound respect for you, not newfound, but even more. You were teaching lawyers about AI. That's good. So, the last question was really, what do you see as success in your mind? And you explained that to us. And I want to tell you, we meet with a lot of customers, but these guys are innovating, which we love, and they're moving forward with what many organizations should be doing. And I'm honored to have you up here on stage and passing the word around. How many of y'all know Michael Ames in the room? Anyone? We were able to work with, and Sean even helped. He was out at UC Medical, and he was able to use some of the solutions from Google and put $6 million back into childhood research for cancer. So it's just amazing, and that's the kind of stuff that you're doing, and honored to have you up here with us. I'm going to open the floor up a little bit. If anyone has any questions for Sean.
I'll throw you a softball. Sean, good points. Culturally, how do you see the future rolling out in terms of getting people to adopt to what a machine learning algorithm actually puts out as a recommendation? So, as you look ahead 3, 4, 5 years, how do you get doctors, nurses in your organization to really be comfortable with what the model is actually saying or recommending as a prescription?
Thank you, Alan, for that question, because it leads. So, does everyone know what a spaghetti model is when you're watching the Weather Channel? I'm seeing some nodding heads. So, I'm kind of a weather geek, among other things. My wife's back there; she'll tell you. So, when we have a hurricane coming in, you start seeing all the reports, and as it really gets serious, they start to zoom in. And you'll see this diagram shown typically somewhere around Florida, unfortunately, where the hurricane's coming, and then you'll see about 8 or 9 or 10 little lines spanning off the tip of where the hurricane actually is. Well, those are all the different weather models of prediction from the different organizations around the world that provide that. So they call it the spaghetti model because they never agree, but that's what machine learning does. You get numbers output and they don't always agree. Not only do they not always agree, they're almost certainly different based on how it was developed, the data set behind it. But the spaghetti model is a representation, I think a bit of a rubric where we can get people's head around that you don't get to know yes or no. It's not binary anymore. You're going to have to make decisions with a range of choices. So the spaghetti model is where the hurricane's going to go, and many of us have followed the last few, Dorian in particular, and the damage it did. You know, you start getting really focused on, well, most of these lines point at Florida, but one of these is pointing at Cuba. So Cuba, you might want to be prepared. So it's kind of thinking about things in terms of risk. And we like to have a yes or no, you know, red, yellow, green, whatever it is. That's just not the world we're in anymore. You have to look at decisions more and more based on risk and probabilities. And much like a spaghetti model, you need to step back and say, well, you know what, I'm in Tampa, maybe 2 of these spaghetti model lines draw over my city, and the other 8 go the other direction. But are you going to just give up on preparation? You know, it's an indication of risk. And that's where I think people will start to have to change their culture and change how they make decisions, is understand that you're not going to get a yes or a no anymore. You're going to be drawn in more like, you know, if we think of an airline pilot at the front of a plane flying into weather, they don't get a yes or a no. They're fed information. They have to make the decision. Is it safe to proceed? Do I need to divert? And down to more and more routine decisions, I think that's going to be part of how we think about things at one level, and then where things have matured, they'll be kind of agreed upon, you know, scales. How do you make a decision? Well, as things become more common, I think, you know, through the masses, the beauty of lots of data and lots of people making the same decisions, we'll start to categorize those for us. But at the core of it, what I always tell people is, you know, people are worried about AI is going to take my job. Well, AI puts out data. It doesn't give you an answer. It's people that turn the data into an answer. And that's where I see a lot of jobs, and that's where I see the culture shifting, is people that can embrace that, embrace a risk-based or a probability-based decision, and be that person to be the bridge between the data and the consumers. That's a big opportunity, and that's where culture is really going to change.
You could be like the Jim Cantori of the DaVita AI/ML program. And here on our spaghetti charts, that European model usually wins, right? It does. Any other questions?
Can you hear me if I just talk a little louder? Shout it out.
No, let him come on over with the microphone.
So you started to mention at the end that there's this goal of 1 in 4 patients treated at home. What are some of the additional specific examples of maybe business questions, desired outcomes that have been driving a lot of the end goal of your work?
Absolutely. So, you know, for different modalities, so different treatment methods, one thing we're looking at is how to identify and prepare a patient for the most optimal modality. We're doing work in our finance areas. In healthcare, you have claims. A certain portion are denied. Sometimes it's straightforward, sometimes it's not. So we're working on optimizing that, and really also to look at behavior of our payers. One of the big problems that happens in healthcare is payers may change a policy, and that doesn't get communicated down to the physicians, the care providers. And so there's a way that we can help by detecting that, making sure that that's communicated. You know, other areas we've got, looking at things pretty straightforward like financials. You know, what is our pipeline? What is our AR backlog? What is our AP backlog? You know, when you get into many of these, you've learned things even before you've built a model. And this has happened before, where just the analysis of a problem has yielded positive results. You know, things like context switching. If people work on a backlog or a work list, we can run analytics and build models, and this is what some of the businesses are starting to realize, that if we look at their workforce, we can find ways to optimize their workforce. And that's especially good in healthcare, because most of these cases, it's not a matter of, oh great, now we can lay off 5 people. No, it's like now we can actually get through 80% of the work we're supposed to do, because today we're only getting through 50%. So things like that. Other areas, like one of the big challenges in healthcare is what's called med reconciliation. So what are the drugs this patient is actually taking today versus what was prescribed and maybe what we think they picked up. So there's an area where AI can use AI visual to look at a pill box and do an automatic reconciliation based on the drugs and the dosing. So there's a way that we can help a patient just do a step that is just mundane and time consuming, and do it incredibly accurately. Lots of stuff in supply chain that we've looked at. What's the optimal, there's a ton of supply chain use cases if you get into this space about, what's the just in time to have supplies ready and minimize cost, what's your par levels, how would you think about supply chain delivery. You can start working upstream even to some of your vendors and look at, hey, maybe there's a better way to receive things, store things, distribute things. But I just think there's so many more yet to come out. Those are just some of the off the top. The other thing that comes just kind of for most everyone here, I think, interested in data science is also connected to data analytics. We did our initial brainstorming and gathered up about 300 ideas. Out of that came about 50 that were AI eligible. The 250 were other projects that needed to happen. And so that was part of that. There's no dumb questions, there's no bad ideas. We were able to harvest 250 other ways to help the business at the same time. So another collateral benefit of running a program like this. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. I got the little ixnay mark from Kalia that we got to kind of wind it down. So is there one more question in the house, or it's a good time to stop? Okay, I want to say thank you so much for every one of you guys showing up tonight. And I speak for Slalom and Google, I believe, when I say that. We really have enjoyed this, a lot of great information. Sean is available for questions and to help and pass the good word about AI/ML. So if you'd like to get in touch with Sean, you can reach out to Alexis, whose name was on your invitation, and she can set it up for us. Thank you, everyone. Sean, thank you so much. Yay, and to the other groups.